65% of Americans say data centers are essential to modern life. But surprisingly, only 6% say that it actually improves the quality of life when you have one nearby. And that gap is about to become one of the most defining infrastructure stories of this decade. And it all starts with understanding exactly how. The AI supercycle will drive a whopping $3 trillion of investment in global data center investments by 2030. But here's what it doesn't really show. Every one of those gigawatts lands somewhere, right? In someone's county, in someone's neighborhood, and someone's electricity bill, even on someone's water supply. So the macro story and the local story on the street are not the same. So with every data center investment, every community runs through 4 phases, and the costs get heavier with each one. First is the siting phase. Non-disclosure agreements and redacted permits and all sorts of bureaucracy means that residents get to know the full story only once the entire negotiations have gone through. So community members arrive at the table with absolutely no leverage whatsoever. And in the global south, this gets even worse. And in the next phase, construction does bring in a temporary surge in jobs, which actually puts a lot of strain on local traffic and local housing. And then all of a sudden, disappears. And in the next phase comes operation, where the real bill lands. And here are the numbers. A single modern AI data center actually consumes as much electricity as 100,000 homes. In fact, very recently, the PJM region in the US had to absorb a bulk of this cost, where the capacity prices actually jumped from $30 megawatt day to $270 megawatt day. Cost that was actually directly passed on to 67 million households in that region. Once these are in operational mode, in the final phase comes modernization. So these data centers, once they're operational, have to be constantly hardware refreshed. And this refresh cycle is compressed to about 18 months. So these communities don't actually get a stable neighbor who's well settled. Instead, they get a permanent construction site that never actually settles down. So if you look back in the last 10 years, Ireland is one of the clearest signals where this pattern actually leads. In Ireland, data centers actually consume 22% of the national electricity, to such an extent that they had to activate a moratorium in Dublin. And this year in Malaysia, we actually saw one of the first protests in Asia against data centers. And bringing in a completely new angle, more recently in March 2026, Iran actually targeted AWS facilities, which also means in the future, data centers could actually potentially be a military target. So the next time you see a data center headline, the investments, the jobs, the national competitiveness, you now know which phase the community is actually in, right? And what the phases they haven't reached yet look like. Follow us for more. This is Nations of Tomorrow.